Little today is as it was. Anatomically, modern humans have existed for about 200,000 years, but only since the end of the 18th century has artificial lighting been widely used. Gas lamps were introduced into European cities at about that time, and electric lights came into use only in the 20th century. In other words, for most of human history, when night fell, it fell hard. Things got dark, really, really dark. And people gathered under the stars, which they could actually see in those days before nighttime light pollution, and under those stars they told stories. In every culture around the globe, storytelling in the form of narrative poetry existed long before the invention of writing. We know this because the earliest manuscripts that we have from every culture, record stories that were already ancient when they were finally written down. One of the earliest texts in English is that of the poem Beowulf. It reworks and retells in a much distorted manner much older stories, ones that predate the emergence of English as a distinct language. Stith Thompson, the great folklorist, did the literary world an enormous favor by compiling a massive index, today known as the Arne Thompson Index, of motifs of ancient folk tales worldwide. Name a story motif. Three wishes, talking animals, the Grateful Dead, cruel sisters, golden apples, dragons, the fairy or demon lover, the instrument that plays itself, and you will find that that motif has an ancient pedigree and was already spread about the world long before historical times. English is a Germanic language. All ancient Germanic societies had official storytellers whose job it was to entertain people in those days before modern entertainments like television and movies and the internet and drones with laser-guided Hellfire missiles. In ancient Denmark, the storyteller was called a skald. In Anglo-Saxon England, the storyteller was a shop. The shop, S-C-O-P, accompanied his stories on the Anglo-Saxon harp, a kind of lyre. Of course, the telling of stories wasn't the only entertainment around campfires. In most cultures, people danced and chanted and sang as well. And sometimes stories were told by the dancers or singers or chanters. All this was part of acting out the stories. Want to know where the Christian devil with his red body and horns comes from? Well, in ancient Europe, people worshipped an Earth Mother and her consort, the Lord of the Forest, and they told stories of the hunt. When they acted these out around campfires, they held up to their heads animal horns or branches in the shape of horns, and that's how they pictured their Lord of the Forest, as a therianthrope read from the campfire with horns. When the Christians spread north across Europe, they made the god of the old religion into the adversary. Grendel's mother, the monster from the bog in Beowulf, is a demonized version in a Christian retelling of the ancient Anglo-Saxon fertility goddess Nearthus, to whom sacrifices were made by binding people, cutting their throats, and throwing them into a bog. You can see an ancient bas-relief of the Lord of the Forest, by the way, on the Gundestrup cauldron, dating from about 250 BCE. But where does this storytelling urge among humans come from? And why is it universal? Storytelling takes energy, and it doesn't produce tangible results. It doesn't mend bones or build houses or plant crops. So why would it survive and be found among every people on Earth from the earliest times onward? Interesting question, huh? Contemporary cognitive scientists have learned that storytelling is an essential, built-in part of the human psyche, involved in every aspect of our lives, including our dreams, memories, and beliefs about ourselves and the world. Storytelling turns out to be one of the fundamental ways in which our brains are organized to make sense of our experience. Only in very recent years have we come to understand this. We are essentially in the Aristotelian sense, storytelling creatures. That is, it's our storytelling that defines us. If that sounds like an overstatement, attend to what I am about to tell you. It's amazing, and it may make you rethink a lot of what you think you know. At the back of each of your eyes are retinas containing rods and cones. These take in visual information from your environment. In each retina there is a place where the optic nerve breaks through it. This is the nerve that carries visual signals to your brain. Because of this interruption of the retinas in each eye, there is a blind spot in each of those eyes where no information at all is available. If what you saw was based on what signals actually hit your retinas at any given moment, you would have two big black spots in your field of vision. Instead, you see a continuous field. Why? Because your brain automatically fills in the missing information for you, based on what was there when your eye saccaded over it a bit earlier. In other words, your brain makes up a story about what's there. Spend some time studying optical illusions, and you will learn that this is only one example of the many ways in which you don't see the world as it is, but rather as the story concocted by your brain says it is. This sort of filling in of missing pieces also happens with our memories. Scientists have discovered that at any given moment, people attend to at most 7 bits of information from their environment. There's a well-known limitation of short-term memory to about 7 items, give or take 2, and that's why telephone numbers in the United States are 7 digits long. So, at any given moment, you are attending to only about 7 items from potentially billions in your environment. When you remember an event, your brain fills in what you were not attending to at the time, based on general information you've gathered on its predispositions and on general beliefs that you have about the world. In short, based on very partial information, your brain, when you remember something, makes up and tells you a story about that past time, and that's what you see in memory in your, quote, mind's eye, end quote. So, people tend to have a lot of false memories because the brain confabulates. It makes up a complete whole story about what was probably the case and presents that whole memory to you with the gaps filled in for your conscious inspection. In short, memory is very, very, very faulty and is based on the storytelling functions of the brain. What are we, except our memories? I am that boy in the Dr. Denton's in my memory sitting before the television with the rabbit ears. I am that teenager in the car at the drive-in with the girl whom I thought would never in a million years go out with me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You can also see this storytelling function of the brain at work in dreaming. Years ago, I had a dream that I was flying into the island of Cuba on a little prop plane. Through the window, I could see the island below the plane. It looked like a big white sheet cake floating in an emerald sea. Next to me on the plane sat a big red orangutan, smoking a cigar. Weird, huh? Why did I have such a crazy dream? Well, in the days preceding the dream, I had read a newspaper story about Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba, being ill. I had flown on a small prop plane. I had attended a wedding where there was a big white sheet cake. I had been to the zoo where I saw an orangutan. And I had played golf with some friends, and we had smoked cigars. The neural circuits in my brain that had recorded these bits and pieces were firing randomly in my sleeping brain, and the part of the brain that does storytelling was working hard in my sleep, trying to piece these random fragments together into a coherent, unified story. That's the most plausible current explanation of why most dreams occur. The storytelling parts of the brain are responding to random inputs and trying to tie them together, to make sense of this random input by making up a plausible story of them. This is akin to the process, pareidolia, that leads people to see angels in cloud formations and pictures of Jesus on their toast. So, those are three important reasons why the brain is set up as a storytelling device. Storytelling allows us to see a complete visual field. It creates for us, from incomplete data, coherent memories, and it ties together random neural firings in our brain to make holes, the holes that we call dreams. But that's not all that storytelling does for us. Storytelling about the future allows us to look ahead, for example, to determine what another creature is going to do. We often play scenarios in our minds that involve possible futures. What will she say if I ask her to the prom? What will the boss say if I ask for a raise? How will that go down? In other words, storytelling provides us with a theory of mind for predicting others' behavior. Stories also help people to connect to one another. We actually get on the same wavelengths. Yuri Hasson, a neuroscientist at Princeton, recorded the brainwaves of people during rest and while listening to a story. During rest, their waves were all over the place. While people were listening to the same story, even at different times and places, those people had brainwaves that were in sync. Storytelling also provides a mechanism for exploring and attempting to understand others generally. Our basic situation in life is that your mind is over there and mine is over here. We're different, and we have to try to figure each other out to have a theory of other people's minds. By telling myself a story about you, I can attempt to bridge that ontological gap. Unfortunately, the stories that we tell ourselves about others tend to be fairly unidimensional. You are simply this or that. I, on the other hand, am an international man of mystery. This is a tendency to guard against. We also tell stories in order to influence others' behavior, to get them to adopt the story that we're telling as their own. This is how advertising works, for example. The advertiser gets you to believe a story about how you will be sexier or smarter or prettier or more successful or of higher status if you just buy the product with the new fresh lemony scent. And it's not just advertisers who do this. The coach tells a story in which her team envisions itself as winners of the big game. The wooer tells the wooee the story of the great life they will have together. Come live with me and be my love, and we shall all the pleasures prove, and so on. Successful cult leaders, coaches, lovers, entrepreneurs, attorneys, politicians, religious leaders, marketers, etc. all share this in common. They know that persuasion is storytelling. The best of them also understand that the most successful stories in the long run are the ones that are true, even if they're fictional. When we tell stories, we spin possible futures. We try things on, hypothetically. And that helps us to develop ideas about who we want to be and what we want to do. Gee, if I travel down that road, I may end up in this better place. And that observation leads to one final supremely important function of storytelling. Who you are, your very self, is a story that you tell yourself about yourself and your history and your relations to others. A story with you as the main character. The stories that you tell yourself about yourself become the person you are. The word person, by the way, comes from the Latin persona, for a mask worn by an actor in the Roman theater. So, our very idea of ourselves, of our personal identity, is dependent upon this storytelling capacity of the human brain, which takes place, for the most part, automatically. There is even a form of cognitive narrative psychotherapy that is all about teaching people to tell themselves more life-enhancing, affirmative stories about themselves, about who they are. Telling yourself the right kinds of stories about yourself and others can unlock your creative potential, improve your relationships, and help you to self-create, to be the person you want to be the artist of yourself. Okay, so to recapitulate, storytelling helps us to fill in the gaps so that we can have coherent memories. It ties together random firings in the brain into coherent dreams. It enables us to sort and make sense of past experiences. It gives us theories of what others think and how they will behave. It enables us to try on various futures, and it helps us to form a personal identity, a sense of who we are. Kinda important, all that. Ha. Storytelling, in fact, is key to being human. It's our defining characteristic. It's deeply, deeply embedded in our brains and in all of our behavior. It runs through every aspect of our lives. It makes us who we are. It's no wonder, then, that people throughout history have told stories. People are made to construct stories, plausible and engaging accounts of things, the way a stapler is made to staple and a hammer is made to hammer. We are homo relator, man the storyteller.